Just moments ago, something shifted in this country, and it didn't happen with a whimper or a backroom deal. A massive collision between the highest court in the land and a mountain of financial evidence has just triggered a clock, and that clock is ticking loud enough for everyone in Washington to hear. We are looking at a 48-hour window where the games of spin, interpretation, and political slogans finally hit a brick wall of cold, hard numbers. Financial records don't care about your favorite political talking points or how many followers you have on social media. They sit there with a stubborn, quiet persistence, waiting to tell a story that cannot be erased or ignored once the light of day hits the page. What we are witnessing right now is the exact moment where accountability stops being a buzzword for cable news and starts being a procedural reality. The system, as slow and frustrating as it can be, has just reminded everyone that the rules of this great republic still apply to those at the top. This isn't a slow build-up where everyone had weeks to prepare their excuses or find a creative way to move the goalposts again. This was a decisive strike that landed with unmistakable force, catching the entire political establishment off guard. When something happens this fast, the usual rhythm of legal maneuvering gets shattered, leaving no room for the rehearsed scripts we've grown so tired of hearing. The era of indefinite delay is officially under strain, and the ground has shifted in real time under the feet of those who thought they were untouchable. This suddenness matters because it changes the emotional weight of the entire controversy, breaking the cycle of numbness that usually sets in during long-running political sagas. We are no longer talking about what might happen eventually, we are watching what is happening imminently. The urgency we see today is a structural change, an acknowledgement that patience has reached its absolute limit in the eyes of the law. If you believe that no one should be above the law in the United States, then this is the moment you have been waiting for. Make sure you join the conversation in the comments below and subscribe to the channel to stay updated as this 48-hour countdown unfolds. We are tracking every development as the system finally forces a resolution that has been avoided for far too long. At the very center of this storm isn't a personality or a partisan ideology, but something far more rigid: financial records and the paper trail they leave behind. These are not arguments that can be reframed by a clever press secretary or waved away as a witch hunt by a friendly media outlet. They are documents that exist independently of intent, reflecting transactions and decisions that have already been set in stone. In our system of oversight, money leaves a trail that can be followed, reconstructed, and cross-checked by those with the authority to do so. This isn't about a single moment of poor judgment, it's about a pattern of conduct that is now being compressed into concrete, verifiable evidence. When accountability rests on speeches and interviews, there is always room for a he said, she said debate that leads nowhere. But when it rests on financial documentation, the margin for ambiguity almost completely vanishes, leaving only the truth. Either the records are produced or they are not, and either they align with the public narrative or they expose it as a total fabrication. This binary quality is exactly why these disclosures are so uniquely powerful and so incredibly uncomfortable for those in power. By forcing these hidden mechanics into the light, the system is asserting that wealth and influence are subject to the same rules as everything else. The usual playbook for the powerful and the well-connected has always been built on a single, reliable strategy: the art of the infinite delay. For years, we have seen the same predictable cycle of procedural objections, jurisdictional challenges, and appeals layered on top of appeals. It is a machinery designed to drain momentum, to stretch months into years, and to ensure that by the time any truth comes out, the public has already moved on. But that machinery has just ground to a halt because the highest authority in this land has removed the friction that once allowed for such evasion. When the exits are blocked and the usual detours are closed, silence is no longer a neutral position, it becomes a loud and clear admission of guilt. This shift is monumental because our legal system, while built on the noble principle of due process, is often exploited by those who treat time as a weapon. They count on the fact that institutions are typically cautious and slow, allowing them to hide in the procedural fog that surrounds complex cases. But when a 48-hour deadline is imposed, that fog is burned away, leaving a direct confrontation between the obligation to the law and the choice to comply. This isn't just a legal technicality, it is a stress test for the very integrity of our institutions and those who claim to serve them. If you value the transparency that keeps this republic alive, now is the time to hit that subscribe button and help us reach more people with the truth. Under this kind of pressure, the protective layer of intermediaries, the lawyers, the advisors, and the committees, begins to evaporate. In a slow-moving dispute, responsibility is easily diffused, shared among a dozen different voices until it belongs to no one at all. But when the window of action is compressed to 2 days, the decision-making process becomes intensely personal and undeniably visible to the American public. The question is no longer about what a legal team is advising, it is about what the individual at the center of the storm is choosing to do right now. This transparency is the ultimate deterrent against the shadow games that have plagued our political landscape for far too long. We must understand that a 48-hour window is not a suggestion or a gesture of accommodation, it is a structural enforcement of accountability. It reveals who was actually prepared to defend their record and who was merely counting on the clock to save them from the consequences of their actions. Preparedness is a sign of honesty, while the desperate scramble for more time is almost always a signal that the underlying facts are indefensible. The system has finally defined what counts as a reasonable timeframe, and anything outside that narrow boundary will be judged by the public and the courts for exactly what it is: resistance to the truth. The narrative flexibility that once allowed these stories to evolve and change with every news cycle is now completely frozen. In a prolonged battle, you can reframe your defense, shift your emphasis, or introduce new distractions to lead the public away from the core issue. But when the clock is ticking this fast, the story you have told is the story you are stuck with, and the facts on the ground cannot be rewritten after the fact. This stillness is unsettling for those who live by the spin, but it is a victory for every citizen who believes that accountability should be an operational reality, not just a moral aspiration. I want to hear what you think. Is 48 hours enough time to see the truth, or is the system still moving too slow? Leave a comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to like this video to help it bypass the mainstream media filters. What we are witnessing is the transition from rhetorical accountability to procedural accountability, and that is a fundamental victory for the rule of law. Rhetorical accountability is weak, it depends on whether or not people agree with you or if they like your political brand. But procedural accountability functions automatically once it is triggered, operating regardless of your status, your influence, or your excuses. It replaces endless, circular debates with a series of sequential steps that lead to a predictable and measurable outcome. This is how a great nation protects its foundations, by ensuring that the rules are not merely advisory, but enforceable. The brilliance of the American experiment lies in the fact that it was never meant to be a rule by men, but a rule by laws that endure long after the actors on the stage have exited. What we are seeing with this rigid 48-hour window is the system reasserting its own primacy over the chaotic noise of modern politics. It is a reminder that while the wheels of justice may turn slowly, they eventually grind exceeding small, especially when they are backed by the full authority of the highest court. This isn't about targeting any specific individual, it is about the survival of an institution that must prove it cannot be bullied, bribed, or delayed into insignificance. Every hour that passes in this countdown is a testament to the strength of our constitutional guardrails. When a deadline like this is issued, it sends a ripple effect through every lower court, every government agency, and every legal firm in the country. It reinforces the idea that there is a ceiling to how much the legal process can be manipulated. If the highest court allows its orders to be treated as suggestions, then the entire structure of our republic begins to crumble. By holding the line on this 48-hour limit, the judiciary is essentially saying that the time for games is over and the time for truth has arrived. The American people are often told that the system is broken, that it only serves the elite, and that accountability is a fairy tale we tell children. But moments like this provide a rare and vital counternarrative. They show that when the process is triggered correctly, it possesses a mechanical, almost cold efficiency that treats a high-ranking official the same way it would treat any other citizen. This is the blind nature of justice that our founders envisioned, a system where the weight of the evidence is the only thing that moves the needle. If you believe in an America where the law is king, then you understand why this moment is so critical for our future. This is exactly why we do what we do on this channel, to pull back the curtain on these complex legal maneuvers and show you the real impact they have on our nation. If you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update as we break down these historic events. Your support allows us to keep providing this level of deep dive analysis that you won't find in the mainstream media. We must also consider the psychological impact of this deadline on the broader political landscape. It creates a moment of clarity that forces every observer to pick a side, not a political side, but a side between order and chaos. When the law speaks with such finality, those who attempt to find alternative routes or creative interpretations are suddenly exposed as being in opposition to the very foundations of our legal order. This isn't about a difference of opinion, it is about a difference of obedience to the law of the land. The clarity provided by a strict deadline is perhaps the most powerful tool the system has to combat the modern era of misinformation. Furthermore, this situation highlights the critical importance of financial transparency in a free society. Money is the lifeblood of power, and when that power is exercised without oversight, it becomes a threat to the liberty of every citizen. The demand for these records is a demand for the truth about how power is funded, how it is maintained, and who it truly serves. In the United States, we don't just take people at their word when it comes to massive sums of money and political influence, we check the books. That process of verification is what separates a functioning democracy from a playground for the corrupt. As the clock ticks down, the silence from certain quarters becomes deafening. In a world where everyone has a comment or a tweet for everything, the inability to explain away a missed deadline or a missing document speaks volumes. This is where the narrative is truly won or lost. It's not in the shouting matches on cable news, but in the quiet, steady march of the second hand on the clock. Every minute that a requirement remains unmet is a minute where the system's authority grows and the subject's credibility shrinks. I want to hear from the patriots in the audience. Do you think the current system of financial oversight is strong enough, or do we need even stricter rules to keep Washington honest? Drop a comment below and let's get a real debate going. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to hear the truth about how our laws actually work. Finally, we have to look at what comes after the 48 hours. This isn't the end of the story, it is the beginning of a new chapter of enforcement. The system doesn't just stop because a deadline is passed, it escalates. The predictability of that escalation is what gives the law its teeth. It ensures that consequences are not just threats, but inevitable outcomes of non-compliance. This is the procedural reality that keeps our society from sliding into total lawlessness, and it is a reality that we must defend with everything we have. As we approach the final hours of this unprecedented 48-hour window, we must recognize that we are no longer just watching a legal case, we are watching a defining moment for the American character. The question at the heart of this storm is whether our institutions still possess the courage to demand answers from those who have spent lifetimes avoiding them. When the system functions as it should, it acts as a great equalizer, stripping away the titles, the wealth, and the influence to reveal the bare facts underneath. This is the ultimate promise of our republic, that the law is a shield for the innocent and a mirror for the powerful, reflecting back exactly what has been done in the dark. The move from abstract debate to concrete action is what makes this development so dangerous for those who have relied on the procedural fog to survive. For too long, accountability has been treated as a suggestion or a partisan talking point, but today it has become an operational reality. We are seeing a transition where the system no longer asks for permission to seek the truth, it demands it. This shift ensures that the standards we hold dear are not merely moral aspirations that can be ignored when they become inconvenient, but are instead embedded in the very machinery of our government. It is this persistence of procedure that allows a nation to endure even when its leaders falter. The consequences of what happens when that clock hits zero will ripple through our history for decades. If compliance is met, we gain a level of transparency that has been missing from the highest levels of power for a generation. If it is met with defiance, we see the true face of those who believe they are masters of the law rather than its servants. Either way, the era of indefinite delay is over, and the truth is no longer a distant possibility, it is an imminent arrival. We must remain vigilant, for the strength of our laws depends entirely on our collective will to see them enforced without fear or favor. Thank you for standing with us as we witness this historic turning point for American justice. If you believe in the power of the truth and the resilience of our republic, make sure you have subscribed and shared this analysis. The countdown is almost over, and the world is watching to see if America still holds its leaders to account.